Boker Tov, good morning. Today is Friday, July 9th, Erev Shabbat, Pashat Matot-Masei, and the Shabbos, the second Shabbos of the 3 weeks when we read the second chapter of Yirmiyahu. If I ask you what's the difference between a well and a pit, so you might have some type of intellectual understanding of the difference between the two. We don't have really much experiential difference because we live in we live with running water and plumbing, so we don't really think about that much about the sources of our water. At most, we think about a reservoir with a pipe the pipes that bring it to our house. But in antiquity, especially, people got their water from one of two sources, unless you lived by a stream. You got it either from a bore or a be'er. A bore or a be'er. A be'er is a well, a bore is a cistern. Here's how that distinction is drawn on, that's a good pun also, is drawn on by the prophet Yirmiyahu, quoting Hashem here in the words when God is outraged at the fact that his people have deserted him. What do we do? Kishtayim ra'oda sa'ami. There are two evils that my people have carried out. Oti azvu makor ma'im chayim. So first, bad enough, they've left me, and I'm the source of living waters. And on top of that, after the issue of having deserted me, then on top of that, lachatzov lahem borot nishparim asher lo yachilu hamayim, to go carve out these cisterns which are broken and can't even hold water. So the outrage is twofold. One is that we desert God, and the other is that we go after the Narishkeit. So leave God, go to the Narish Avodah Zaras that can't produce anything for you. And the imagery that's drawn on between the difference between God and all the idols and the idolatry is the difference between God as the source of living waters and the pit or the cistern. And what's interesting is the way that the word bor is written, it's written as if it should be pronounced be'er. But it's not. It's pronounced bor. But the aleph is sitting there and not pronounced. As if it wants us to think about what the power of the well and the limitations of the bore of the cistern. What are the limitations of a cistern? All a cistern can do is gather water for you. Rainwater, runoff water of other kinds. And if you have a nice, good rainy season, you'll fill a cistern and hopefully you'll cover it in a certain way and you'll be able to draw on it into the dry, hot months of the summer. But once it's empty, it's empty. And if it's cracked, it's worthless. But a well, on the other hand, first, it needs to be open, right? Because you're not gathering water, you're going to the source, to the makor of Mayim Chayim. Here I want to have a shift for a moment to the Gemara in Brachot, and we'll see how that draws together through some words of the Sfas Emes. Here's the Gemara in Brachot. The Gemara wants to tell you how you can tell through someone's brachot, the way they recite a bracha, or formulate a bracha, whether they are a Talmid Chacham or not. Ketzad. Rabbi Omer. Rabbi said, here's how it plays out. If you say at the end of your call to benching, Baruch Shachalnu Mishalo, right? Uvetuvo chayinu, and in God's goodness we live. Hare zeh Talmid Chacham. That person is an educated scholar. But if you don't say uvetuvo, but rather you say umituvo, and from God's goodness, hare zeh bor. This person is a bor, which means an ignoramus. It's a strange choice, right? You become an ignoramus. So you're not sophisticated, but bor, because it's sort of like this harsh term that we use for a person who is ignorant, deeply ignorant of the core ideas. And so the simple reading is right, because If you only think that you have only some of your goodness of God, you're missing the point. You should have all the goodness of God. That's kind of the basic message. Okay, says the Sfas Emes. That's not the way you should read this Gemara. You should read it as hinting at a different teaching. Here's what the Sfas Emes says. Sfas Emes, again, being one of the great Hasidic teachers. Betuvo chayinu hu tamid chacham uperashnu ki mituvo hu chelek min hatov v'nifrad mino. If you say mituvo, from God's goodness, then you see that yourself that you have a portion. It's a portion, a section of the good, but you are separate from it. Betuvo hu dveiku b'guf hatov. This is cleaving to the very body or the essence of the good itself. What's he getting at? So first thing he wants to say that you should understand. And he goes on to describe this, that bore is not bore as an ignorance, but rather you are a cistern, you're a pit. If you say mituvo, because you believe that the goodness that we have in this world and the experience of the good in this world is because it has been delivered to you, it's been gathered to you, and now you take from it. But it's dropped off, fills up, and you get it. And that is a status of being a bore, of being a cistern, in your religious perspective of what is. But if you want to be a Talmid Chacham, and here Talmid Chacham isn't just about your brilliant mind or your accumulated wisdom and knowledge of information, but he would have you say a spiritual Talmid Chacham is a person who knows uvetuvo chayinu, that I live in God's goodness, I'm connected to the good and the source of the good. That's what the Haftarah was talking about. The idolatry, perhaps the Haftarah is talking about real idolatry and uses a metaphor, okay? But you go to cisterns and they're broken, they're nothing. But and because of course the idols can't give you anything. But it might mean that there's a the flawed version of religious life where you just are disconnected. You just believe that there are things there that you can take benefit from, and maybe you thank God for having delivered them to you. But that's as far as it goes, and that's not what the religious quest should be. The religious quest is wanting to connect in some deep way to the source of living waters. In God's goodness we live. Here we find ourselves in the 3 weeks when we feel quite distant. God has has pulled away from us, and that is one of the themes of this time. What we have to do is work on reversing that, and that's personal avoda. I can tell you of myself, most of the time, if I have any consciousness at all, I'm living a umituvo chayinu experience. I'm appreciative of the fact that God gave me a lot of things, but that's not what we should be working on. And now's the time to indeed work on it, where I want to not just know that I receive from God, but rather I want to connect. That's the spiritual quest. And if you don't engage in it, then you're missing. You're missing so much. How do you do it? You do it through prayer. You do it through music. You do it through spirit engagement with other people in a holy way. All these things and consciousness and readiness and openness. And when you find your way to that flow from the Makor Mayim Chaim, then you've got it. Start with the desire for it. If you start with the desire, then the rest will begin to fall into place. I hope and I pray and I encourage you all to use this time in the driest period of the Jewish people of the Jewish season to try to reach back out to God and connect to God as the Makor Mayim Chayim, the source of living waters. Have a beautiful Shabbat and a great day.